Good morning and welcome to Breakfast with Dan Walker and Sally Nugent.
Headlines for you at 6 o'clock this morning. Shops and gyms will be free to reopen when lockdown ends in England next week, but it could be takeaway only for some pubs and restaurants.
More details of England's 3 new tiers will be revealed today, but plans for families to get together at Christmas across the UK are still to be confirmed.
1 year on, in his first TV interview, we'll hear from the man who confronted the London Bridge attacker with a narwhal tusk.
The weight of it was what struck me straight away. It was just really quite heavy, a solid thing, twisted like a plait of hair to a fine point at the end.
Good morning. Paying for public services over a pandemic. We'll look at who might be the winners and losers when the Chancellor sets out his spending review this week.
Good morning. 64 league games unbeaten at Anfield, a new record for Liverpool. Victory over Leicester puts them back towards the top of the Premier League, sitting just behind Tottenham on goal difference.
And from racism to Star Wars and his new role as a pioneering policeman in the Met, we will hear from the actor John Boyega.
Good morning. It's a cold start to the day. For some of us, a frosty one as well, but a lot of dry weather, a fair bit of sunshine, cloud building in from the west through the day with some rain in the northwest. I'll have all the details in about 10 minutes.
Good morning, it's Monday, November the 23rd. Top story for you this morning. Gyms and non-essential shops are expected to be allowed to reopen in all parts of England when lockdown ends next week, even those facing the highest tier of coronavirus restrictions.
Now, pub closing times will also be relaxed, and there are indications that limited family gatherings will be allowed across the UK over Christmas, as our political correspondent Vicky Young reports.
Christmas won't be normal this year, but across the UK rules will be relaxed for a few days so families and friends can meet up. Plans will be finalised later this week to allow limited household mixing. But some are urging people to be very cautious.
It won't just be a matter, if we open things up, of then having to close them down to bring infections down. Many people will get infected, many people will get harmed, and many people will die. And to me, in this pandemic, the expression of the Christmas spirit and the expression of love for my family is not to do things that will harm them.
And it's not just Christmas that ministers in England have to think about. Before that, on December the 2nd, national restrictions will end, bringing a return to the regional 3-tier approach. But that's going to be beefed up after some government scientists complained that the restrictions weren't effective. So gyms and shops are expected to be allowed to reopen in all areas. The 10 p.m. curfew for pubs and restaurants will be abandoned. Last orders will be at 10, but customers will have an extra hour to drink up. But pubs could be limited to takeaway service only in areas with the highest coronavirus levels. Every region of England will be told on Thursday which tier it'll be put into. In Nottinghamshire, most people seem resigned to continued restrictions.
On the brink of cheesed off, if you like.
It's just a shame that some people seem to have disregarded the rules.
I think the tier system's a little bit difficult for people to follow. We're not really, my girlfriend lives in Lincoln, so we're not really sure whether we can visit or not.
Yeah, it's out of our control, right? So it's pointless being fed up with it.
Boris Johnson wants to give people hope that with extra testing and vaccinations on the way, life could return to normal next year. But some difficult weeks lay ahead. Vicky Young, BBC News, Westminster.
And we'll be finding out a little bit more from the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, who's going to be here at 7:30 this morning. I know it's one of those mornings where you've probably got loads of questions about what will happen, how it will happen and when it will happen. So do send them through and we'll try and get through as many of those as we can with Matt Hancock a bit later.
Yeah, change also happening in Australia right now as Australians are moving freely between the country's 2 most populous states, Victoria and New South Wales, for the first time in 5 months.
You might remember the border was shut back in July after COVID cases soared in Melbourne, that's the capital of Victoria, but the state has now gone for more than 3 weeks without a new infection. Our Australia correspondent Shaima Khalil is in Melbourne. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme this morning. So are things back in business? Is it normal?
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Sally. Yeah, it does feel that way. You know, people are coming and going. It's a nice sunny day. Mind you, it can rain any minute. It's Melbourne. But now that we can actually go back to New South Wales, we can actually go back to Sydney without quarantining. We're here for the first time in a very long time. And yes, the city seems to be getting its buzz back. We were driving around the city yesterday. Cafes, restaurants, pubs were open. Everybody was COVID safe. Shops were busy. And this was actually unimaginable only a few weeks ago. This was one of the longest and harshest lockdowns, not just in Australia, but in the world after that surge. But with 24 consecutive days now with no new COVID-19 cases, it does seem that Melbourne has now turned a corner. It has come at a cost with businesses. $70 million a day were lost in that state. Many businesses who have reopened told us we feel like we're starting from scratch. But for example, for families who are able to go back to Sydney today, get on a plane, who we met at the airport, they say this has just been the moment they've been waiting for. So very exciting times for Melbourne, especially for Melburnians who are able to go back to Sydney and see their families after a very, very long time. It's a tough road ahead in terms of recovery, especially economic recovery, but they say they're at least on the right path.
OK, Shyama, thank you very much for that. Really interesting.
Now, a co-founder of the Ice Bucket Challenge, the viral craze which helped to raise millions of pounds for research into motor neurone disease, has died of the illness. Patrick Quinn, who was 37, was diagnosed with ALS, as MND is known in the United States, 7 years ago. The campaign raised $220 million, that's £163 million, for vital research. And later on the programme this morning, we are going to be talking to Doddy Weir, who is backing calls for more funding into a cure. Of course, diagnosed himself several years ago and campaigning all the time.
Incredible, that water bucket challenge. Just took over the world, didn't it?
Yeah.
For a few weeks, it was everywhere. Everyone was getting involved.
Yeah, raised awareness, huge awareness as well as money.
Thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, loads of that to come for you this morning. Also, the publisher of the Oxford English Dictionary has revealed the word of the year. In fact, not one of them, 16 of them.
A bumper crop of new expressions reflects the fact that we've had to get used to so many new situations and experiences during 2020. Our media editor, Amal Rajan, has the details.
We need people to start working from home where they possibly can.
And announcing an effective lockdown.
But are furloughed and kept on payroll.
Supplies of face masks for key health workers could be put at risk. Adults who are living alone will be able to mix in their support bubble.
Language evolves, but this year it's grown and changed faster than ever. That's why, for the first time, Oxford Languages are publishing Words of the Year, plural, rather than a single Word of the Year. The main driver of change is the pandemic, of course. Words like furlough, staycation and coronavirus are all among the words of the year. Usage of the words remote and remotely are both up by more than 300% since March. And COVID is a new word for 2020. The other big reason is that this is the too much information age.
I know nothing about QAnon.
With social media spouting words every second of every day, particular words spread and gain currency faster than ever. Though intriguingly, usage of the word Brexit is down by 80%.
I think the words really that have had the most impact have to probably be, for everybody, the COVID type words, as we're calling them. So either things to do with the pandemic itself and the disease or treatment, or also the ways that we've had to adapt to life. And fascinating for me, certainly, is that these words have gone almost from nothing. We probably didn't think we ever used these words before. And suddenly, almost every conversation we're having is peppered with these words.
Never before in human history has so much language been around us. But 2020 always had the feeling of a landmark year, and the words we've used provide evidence aplenty. Amal Rajan, BBC News.
We're talking about that later in the programme as well. Susie Dent is going to be here, isn't she? Now, we've had a lovely update on the story that you might have seen on breakfast yesterday morning. It's about 9-year-old boy Freddie, who is running a mile and a quarter every day until Christmas.
Now, he's doing it to show support for his friend Huey, who is being treated for leukemia. Now, here's Freddie putting in those miles. He's set out, look at him, go on, set out to raise £1,000. He has already smashed the £10,000 mark.
Huey told Breakfast how he'd like to use some of the funds to help Royal Manchester Children's Hospital, where he's being treated.
I wanted to improve the healthiness of the food, so to get fresh fruit up on the ward and an orange juice machine. And upstairs there's a playground area, an outside playground area. So in 6 weeks, that was where I could get my only bit of fresh air. So I wanted to improve up there a bit.
For you both, and you, because you're a great mate, and you fully deserve a lottery at this time. So,
Now, not surprisingly, lots of people have been charmed by this, including this man you can see here, the footballer James Tarkowski. He plays for Burnley, the club which Huey and Freddie both support. Do you know what he was delivering then?
Did you see the packaging? After watching On Breakfast, he actually turned up and gave him a brand new PS5, which is ridiculously hard to get hold of. I don't know where he got 2 of them, but brilliant stuff.
One for each of the boys. That is unbelievable.
It's lovely. Isn't it lovely, isn't it? When there's a story which touches so many people, and then it's how you react to that, I think. You know, most of us just sit there and go, isn't that lovely? But then to go the extra mile and go and do something beautiful for those 2 lads is just fantastic.
Well done to everybody involved in that. I think that total will keep ticking up.
Yeah, it's one of those stories, it touches everybody, isn't it?
Now, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak is setting out the government's spending plans this week. Nina is going to explain them all, are you? I hope.
I wouldn't say all, Sally. Don't oversell it.
Give it a go.
I'll give it a bash.
You've got some friends, though, haven't you?
Bear with me, I have got some friends. Good morning. Yeah, the focus this week will be on Rishi Sunak. On Wednesday, he'll outline the spending review. Now, this is the Chancellor's big shopping trip. He gets to set out what he's going to spend money on in different government departments. Now, usually, this covers up to around 4 years of planning. But he can't plan too far ahead at the moment because it's impossible to predict how the economy will come out of this period and how much cash he'll have to spend. Now, we don't know the full details yet, but the Chancellor has promised to keep some promises that were made pre-pandemic. We learned this week there'll be an extra £3 billion for the health service to clear some of the backlog that's been caused by COVID. That's on top of the long-term funding already agreed for the NHS. And big projects like new schools, HS2, well, they remain ring-fenced, he says. And we also know that defence spending is getting £16.5 billion more over 4 years. Now, some of that will also go on ambitious space projects and on cyber defence. This weekend, the government also announced £100 billion of long-term investment for things like fibre broadband and projects like flood defences. So those are the promises that he's sticking to, but that's while he's borrowing in vast amounts to cope with the pandemic. In fact, borrowing reached £215 billion since April. To give you some context, that's nearly 5 times higher than the same period last year. He did warn yesterday there is an economic shock ahead, suggesting that tax rises and some savings will have to come.
This year, government borrowing has rocketed, and now the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, is looking ahead. He's got lots of competing priorities. Difficult to see where he can make savings when lots of public services are already on their knees. And he's trying to grapple with the fact that the economy needs more support, but also that the government has lots of things it's promised money to, and delivering all of that at the same time is going to be really tricky.
Where will those savings come from? Well, last week we found out that most public sector workers are bracing themselves for a pay freeze, and there's speculation that overseas aid will be cut. What about grassroots public services provided by local authorities? They've already suffered from 10 years of austerity. They could face more cuts. And the issue for the Prime Minister and the Chancellor is he made loads of political promises last year about levelling up, making sure money is more fairly distributed to the north of England. We expect a change in the way that spending will be allowed. The problem is all of those promises were made before the pandemic, and they've said they will stick to them.
Nina, thank you very much.
Easy.
Have you got the Chancellor and his shopping trolley coming back later, are they?
Would you like them to, Dan?
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot.
Good, OK.
Yeah, I like the way you're sort of stepping into the studio. Very nice.
I couldn't quite see him, you see, so I'll
Oh, we could see him, it's fine.
He was definitely there.
He was definitely there.
With his trolley. Thank you.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.